Hello, my name is Dean Contover, and this is The Current Buzz. Thank you for watching today. Today we have Rachel Beard. She's the clinician for the Chelmsford and Tingsboro Police Department. We have Lieutenant Todd Ahern. He's the commander of the Wellness Division. I didn't even know there was a Wellness Division in the Chelmsford Police Department, but we're going to talk about it. But a clinician, I don't know what a clinician does, so I'm going to ask Rachel what a clinician does. What type of education do you need? Why do we have a clinician at Chelmsford Police Department, and how to contact them in regards to the clinician if you're having problems with somebody at home, domestic violence or something like that, which is big. But Rachel, what is a clinician, and what education do you need? And are you certified with the state, or is there a license board or something to that effect?
So I got my undergrad from Bridgewater State in social work,
Okay.
and then I went on to get my graduate degree from University of Louisville, also in social work. And I got the job here with the police department about 2 years ago, and in that time I got licensed in social work as well.
Okay. There's different licenses, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
which one, clinician? Or
So I have my LCSW, which is licensed certified social worker,
Okay.
and then there's one above it, which is a licensed independent.
Oh, independent. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
There's 4 of them, right?
Yeah, it depends on what degree you have.
Yeah, what degree? Yeah, I get it. So a clinician does what with the Chelmsford Police Department? And how do they contact you if there's a problem in the home and they need you and Todd to go out and resolve a problem?
So my role, a lot of it involves co-response. So if there's an emergency at your home, whether it's with you, family member, a child, anything like that, you would call the police department in an emergency situation. Right. And if I'm available, which is Monday through Friday, I would go and assist the officers, whether it's myself and the lieutenant or just any of the other officers on the road.
Now, should they call 911 or should they call the main business number, and we have it up there in your extension if they need it, so the people could write it down if they need to call you?
So if it's an emergency, absolutely call 911.
Okay.
If you're just looking for advice or you have questions, then call my extension and I'll get back to you.
And we have it up on the screen. We'll put it up there a couple of times so people will know what extension to call you. And Todd, you have an extension too, but we'll keep it private right at this moment.
Well, I'm not against it. It's all good. Mine's 113, but same number.
All right, well, fair is fair. So the clinician goes out. So what do you go out on a cruiser with Todd? Is that it?
Either Todd, if he's available, or just an officer.
Okay. So you go out there, and what happens? You knock on the door. Do they invite you in, or do you need a warrant to go into the home, or how is that resolved? I don't know. Maybe Todd could answer that.
I think what it boils down to is oftentimes she'll go as co-response to us or a follow-up to a call that we go to, right? So oftentimes sometimes people will already know if they have mental health challenges or issues that they're dealing with in the house or domestic violence issues. But a lot of times people will call us when somebody's in crises, right?
Okay.
And so if we're going out there in response to that, depending on the severity of the call or whether or not we've dealt with somebody a bunch of times or we're actively trying to give them an appropriate referral, Rachel will go out in a co-response fashion, and that might be with me. It could be with a patrol unit.
Okay.
All of our patrol units are kind of on board with the way we respond to mental health now. They know the expectations. We've sort of changed our focus over the last several years. They're very well trained in crisis intervention team, which is a 40-hour program.
Wow, okay.
Probably about 2/3 of our officers are trained in that now.
So is it a state certification, or is it town? Or?
Yeah, crisis intervention team, there's actually an international model.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and so it started in the United States, I believe, in Memphis. It's all around the country.
Okay.
We utilize it in Massachusetts. They did a lot of it in Somerville, starting it out in Middlesex County. And then more recently, we actually started a program of our own within the collaborative that we have with the other local towns. just so we could have more seats in training and get more officers trained. But yeah, typically we'll go out when somebody's in crises, and it's either a co-response, or if the officer decides it's maybe not that severe, we might do a follow-up or an educational type of thing. And that just depends on the severity of the call, typically. And they're either looking for advice, or maybe they want an evaluation through the ambulance or at the hospital. That can be voluntary. If it's really severe, it might be involuntary, just to make sure that the person gets the treatment they need.
Okay, so domestic violence, there's a court order to not go into the home or whatever they do, right?
Yeah.
And let's say the person goes or tries to get into the home. Do you go out to that, or is it?
We can go to, so what we find sometimes, right, is whether it's we deal with mental health, substance use, sometimes domestic violence, or some of the other social issues. What we find is not all the time, but a lot of times these things will be co-occurring, we call it, right? So mental health might dovetail with substance use. There might be co-occurring issues. What we find sometimes with domestic violence is this co-occurrence of substance use, alcohol. It could be mental health issues. And so we're all sort of trying to get trained up on what type of response are we looking for here. We try to talk to the stakeholders, whether it be family members, and look at the history. And again, the idea is to try to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen. Give the person the right referral, make sure they can get treatment or help with whatever the issue is.
Rachel, when you go to the scene, right, you have to write up a report?
So I have my own clinical notes that
That's what I wanted, clarification.
Yeah.
And the police have a separate report,
Correct.
which is public.
Correct. So
And yours is not public.
Correct.
Who can see your report?
So we have a collaborative with other police departments
Yes.
in the area, Tewksbury, Billerica, Dracut, Tingsboro, and Chelmsford. The other clinicians in those towns can see that just because we all work together.
I see.
Other than that, it's nobody else can see it.
What's it, the HIPAA law?
Yeah.
Where it's
controlled by HIPAA,
It's
yeah.
controlled.
Yeah.
So can a police chief see your report? Or?
They don't see her notes. She could give us a really dummied down version without any clinical things, just so we have an idea of what the response was. And it dovetails with our records, but we don't get to see any sort of treatment or diagnosis or anything
I
like
see.
that.
Okay.
It's completely separate.
So you can make a diagnosis on something from your experiences, right? When you write it down, a diagnosis, question mark, right?
Sometimes it's not necessarily a diagnosis.
Okay.
It could be, but just in terms of treatment, like let's say I help them get into a detox, for example.
Okay, good.
Or I help them find a therapist, anything like that. That's something that I would keep for myself, but I would maybe let the officer know, hey, I helped out this person. And that's pretty much the extent of it.
I think a misconception there too sometimes, Dean, is we almost, a lot of times we don't have to have a diagnosis or something. A lot of it is just gathering facts from the family, from the person that we're dealing with. Oftentimes they know what their issues are, right? It's not something that's brand new. It might be something they've already struggled with or they're already seeing somebody for. So they're a wealth of knowledge on how to get the right treatment or referral just by talking to them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, see, it's important for you to come on and talk about this. Another thing I want to talk about is, even though we talked about diagnosis and suggested treatment, social media with the young kids, how does that affect your job? And do you get parents calling you or calling the social workers at school, or should they call the school social workers first and then maybe you for any questions? I don't know how that revolves. But there is a problem with social media, isn't there?
Yeah.
And explain it to some parents who may not realize it may be going on in their home and it's a spillover into the schools.
Right.
And they don't comprehend that there's a spillover in regards to the schools because other kids know about it or harass that particular student, etc.
I think it depends on what is posted on social media or what's being said via text. So if it's an emergency, definitely call 911 in the moment. And if I'm available, I'll be there. But if it's a case of maybe bullying, someone just saying not nice things to their daughter or their son, then let the school know and they'll follow up. If they need my help, I can follow up too. So I think it just depends what's being said or posted on social media.
I see. Okay. So do you go to the high schools or middle schools at all, or occasionally, or?
Occasionally.
Oh, okay.
So they do have social workers in the school. If they need help, then I'm certainly available. But typically they handle things in-house. I'm just there as an extra resource if they need it.
What should a parent look for in regards to their child if they're worried about mental health or social media affecting them specifically?
I'd say if they start to pull away from things that they used to be interested in, whether that's after-school activities or hanging out with their friends, maybe they're hanging out in their room a little more often, and just keeping an eye on them, if they're doing things out of the ordinary. Maybe they're not eating, not sleeping, anything like that.
Staying up late and not doing their homework or things like that?
Yeah, maybe if they were a great student at one point and now their grades are starting to fall down, then certainly it's worth noting.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think, honestly, parents and family members know their family members better than we do, right?
Yeah.
They know. Oftentimes they know, and I would say listen to your instinct. If you think there might be an issue, talk about it, figure it out, see if you need help, and go get the help, right? Like, the stigma is really kind of going away from seeking help for mental health issues.
Right, yeah.
It's really more of a medical thing these days. It's important. Any one of us could find ourselves sort of in that situation at any time. And the important thing is particularly with us, we're accessible. It's sort of like, there's no question is a dumb question. Well, it's the same thing with this. If you think you might have an issue or something you need to deal with, whether it's call the school, call us, we're always available. Find a way. We cast a wide net so that we can help people.
Some children may need medication in regards to mental health issues.
Sometimes.
And sometimes, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
depends. It depends on what their doctor says or their prescriber.
or you should tell them to go to their physician, their pediatric physician,
Yeah.
to discuss it with them, or call up the office and discuss it with the doctor or the nurse, on call or whatever, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. If you think that your child needs extra help or medication, then that certainly should go through your primary doctor.
Yeah, a lot of parents, when it comes to mental health, don't want to admit their children have the problem, right, Todd? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
no,
kind of
it's kind of what I was saying is that, and I think, Dean, historically, 20 or 30 years ago, it was a lot more stigmatized.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And you'd know,
Yeah.
we're not from the exact same generation, but we do go back generationally where at the end of the day, you kind of handled things within the family. You kept it within the family. You didn't
Right.
talk to people. You didn't seek medication. And what we see now is it's a lot more, it's not as stigmatized, and people are willing to accept help, and we would encourage that. And if they need medication, that's fine. We're about providing the right resources. Go check with your doctor. But yeah, reach out for help. You shouldn't be ashamed. If you don't address it early on,
Yeah,
you
that's
might
true.
be running into a bigger problem down the road. And then we come when it's a crisis situation, and it's harder to sort of manage, right?
Yeah, I mean, it should be resolved early because, if your child's going to college and she's struggling with grades and so forth down the road, even in college she'll struggle, or he will struggle with grades where maybe medication may be helpful in regards to resolving that problem.
Yeah, medication, or it just could be game plans and strategies. Listen, college is a tough adjustment.
Yeah,
We all know if you have
exactly.
college-age kids, it's a different deal.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about kids, and we certainly want to make sure we take care of the kiddos. That's not unique to kids. Social media is not unique to kids, right?
No, that's true.
Even parents and adults
Yeah.
like to get the likes on their Facebook and put out the good stories on the Facebook. We don't always see the tough stories,
Yeah,
right?
good point.
So we're all kind of part of that deal. But the thing about, I think, that connects with social media, the important thing is a lot of times kids will associate their self-esteem to how many likes they get on social media, and so that can have an immediate and sometimes a drastic effect. So that definitely needs to be sort of monitored. And
So you're the commander of the wellness division, and I want to read something in regards, as I looked up, in regards to mental wellness. Right, this is from the World Health Organization. It says a state of well-being in which the individual realizes that his or her abilities can cope with normal stresses of life and can work productively and fruitfully and able to make contributions to his or her community.
Yeah.
That's mental wellness, which makes sense to me.
I think that's a great definition.
You know?
Yeah.
So, so how long has the wellness division been with the Chelmsford Police Department, and how were you picked? And
So I think to look at a quick historical snapshot is, it wasn't called the Wellness Division necessarily 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
But that's about when we started, and originally it was 4 communities. It was Tewksbury, Barica, Drake, at Chelmsford. And we decided to try to approach mental health issues differently, right? And it was initially called a jail diversion program, so that when you run into somebody in crises, the most appropriate place for them may not be in your cellar, in the jail, right? Because you think they're misbehaving. Well, they're not necessarily misbehaving. They're in a state of crises.
Right.
And they need help. They don't need to be arrested, right? So we try to figure out the right channel to put them in. Additionally, there's a lot, there was a mechanism for involuntary committal. It's called a Section 12. Police officers, like doctors, are able to actually initiate a Section 12. And I think a lot of that came from, at 2:30 in the morning, if somebody's in crises, the people that are going to run into them are the police. So we had to have a mechanism to get them to the hospital, even if they don't want to go. But it's not always appropriate to involuntarily commit somebody. You're essentially, you could be almost arresting them, taking them by force if necessary. So that's something that's a lot of authority, but there's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. So you need to make sure that you're sending people to the right place. That might not be the right outcome either. So we really tried to get better at, how do we respond to these? How do we de-escalate? How do we have a conversation with that person and stakeholders and figure out what's going to give us the most satisfactory outcome here? What's going to help this person the most? What type of follow-up? What type of resources do they need? So from there, it grew and it grew, and the clinician quickly became sort of a one-armed paper hanger. And it wasn't Rachel initially, but we added another clinician, and at some point now we're at 4 clinicians. We've added Tingsboro as a community, so we now have 5 communities. We share with Tingsboro. They get Rachel a little bit too. And then we decided, okay, in addition to that, we want to train our officers. All of the communities are training their officers in crisis intervention team. Again, 40 hours, it's a phenomenal program. The officers get a really good understanding of how to de-escalate, how to talk to somebody, how to resource provision and things like that. And so it's just grown to the point where it's part of the way we respond. We've shifted our focus, and I think we're a lot better. And Rachel's the expert. I talked to her a lot about how she thinks we're doing, because we're not experts. But are we achieving the goal? We talk a lot about, is there anything we need to be doing differently? How can we treat this in a different way? And I think that ongoing analysis enables us to improve even that much further. Our goal is to train every officer in crisis intervention team. I think they know the expectations on these responses are different now, and that the need from people is different. And so, we've gotten a lot of good feedback, both from people in the department and from people that we've helped over time, and just we're very optimistic about it, and it's rewarding when you give people the right type of help.
Are you getting better education, police officers on the force these days?
Yeah, I mean,
in regards to more understanding, in regards to mental health.
I think that regardless of who we get, we do get a lot of officers with college degrees. And there's sort of incentives for that and things. But I think regardless of what level you come in, well, obviously we try to get the best candidates. But you train them now in this. Back in the day, that wasn't a premium. In the academy level now, they have instituted, they give them mental health first aid training, which is sort of a precursor to CIT.
Oh, wow.
That's an 8-hour program. That's in the academy automatically.
I see.
So even at the state level, you're approaching this type of, we know that there's an increase in this type of call. COVID gave us a little bit of an echo bounce in how much we respond to these types of calls. And we just want people to know that we're gonna try the best we can. One of the things I tell people, and I teach some of the CIT classes, is I used to help hire a lot of our officers as a background investigator. And we would have them write a letter to the chief. This is why I want to become a police officer. And I said, what one word do you think we always see in that letter? And they usually get it within a couple of guesses. It's help. Right? Like everybody writes, I want to help people.
Wow.
So this is a great opportunity for us to genuinely help people. And so I think the officers take it very serious.
Let me ask you a question. When you see videos from the Midwest or something like that, do you say to yourself, Todd, that this should have been handled differently in regards to some police departments. I don't want you to be critical of any one, but you see some videos that should have been handled differently rather than taking out your pistol and be aggressive.
I think it's very difficult to associate all police agencies the same.
Right.
Do I believe that police officers, by and large, try to do a great job every day and try to help people?
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I don't think that, irrespective of the region of the country.
Right.
Do I think that we're very fortunate to work in the Northeast, and do I think we're way ahead of the curve?
I think so.
I really do, and I really do, and that's not a knock on anybody. There's a lot of places that do a great job. What I like to tell people, whether it's officers or people out on the street, they'll say to me, people don't treat you right. I say, listen, I can't be we can't pay too much attention to the national narrative of what's going on in the area.
Yeah.
We got to worry about what's going on in Chelmsford. And we're very fortunate to have a very, very supportive community that works very well with us. We do a lot of outreach with them. And I think in that sense, we're lucky. So if we can boil it down and kind of worry about what we're dealing with here locally, we've got it made. We really do. And I think we have a lot of respect for each other, as co-workers, and the community is very supportive.
So you've been on police force over 30 years. You've seen it change. Has the mentality of the people, like my age group, think police work is what it was 30 years ago? It's changed.
Oh, it's changed tremendously. I've seen amazing. It's incredible, really, because I sort of came in at the end of a generation, right? The early '90s, and it was just very vastly different. And so they a lot of times the police automatically got authority and things like that.
Right.
And people want you to sort of earn that authority now, and that's okay. Like, we also have to pay attention to the needs and the wants of people, and that's fine. And we can analyze the way we do our job, and if we can do a better job, that's fine. It's give and take, like everything,
Rachel, I have 2 minutes. Anything you want to say in regards to what people should do or how you feel about the community?
The other thing I was going to add is under the wellness division, it's not necessarily calls for service for mental health, substance use, or anything like that. Sometimes it's helping people that are without housing. We've certainly.
Oh, good point.
So we've spoken with multiple people. We've gotten them housing or whatever they need in terms of resources. So we, like he said, we cast a wide net and we cover people in those situations.
What happens if you encounter somebody that English is not their major language? What happens in that situation?
We would either get a translator, either from a neighboring department, or there's apps on our phone, or there's a phone number that we can call to get a translator to be able to communicate.
Oh, is that right? I mean, right on the spot, and you just talk to them? And
we have a service that we can call.
Is that right? Oh.
Yeah.
I think the key is to make people understand that they're valued no matter what walk of life they come from or what language they speak or if they're unhoused.
Or what color they are.
None of that matters to us.
Okay,
and
good.
I think
Good to hear.
Universal. Like I really believe that our officers are good officers, and we want to make sure that people feel valued and then they know we're there to help, and that's it. And that's the deal.
Good point. Yeah, that's very important. Real quick, Section 12, what's the procedure? Is that a voluntary thing or a 3-day thing?
Yeah, so it's not. So again, our level of response is it can be sort of a advice and a stay in place, and that might happen sometimes more with like a minor and the parents are involved in their treatment and they already see somebody and they're gonna, and then the next level might be, a voluntary evaluation where the parents could take them or the ambulance could take them. The last one is the Section 12, and that's involuntary, and that can really be initiated by
that's kind of touchy, isn't it?
It's tough.
These days.
It's tough because, again, you don't want to just send somebody because, I don't think they're making sense. They really have to be a threat of a harm to themselves or to somebody else.
Okay.
So there's sort of elements that need to be met, and then they go to the hospital, and the hospital can keep them for a few days, and then they can send them inpatient to a facility for a longer time until they're better. And the idea is, if they're in true crises, we want to make sure that they can stabilize them and get them the right treatment.
I want to thank you for coming both on